which is, of course, that we are already a part of that thing called God. Do you follow me? Okay. And the path, therefore, and the journey on the path is really, technically, nothing but you're dealing with this false image of yourself. It is nothing but a kind of a process of becoming detached from your own self. Now, this is very interesting. It is removing this grip-like vice that you have around this image that you have created of yourself. And remember, it is your own creation. It is made up of the commentaries of people who have interacted in your life. And in each life, you've had a different self-image. Even in this one life, your image of yourself goes unchanging. You see, a lot of it has to do with the role you play. Now you get children and you add to your image now the role of a parent. You see my point? And you get a job, now you add to that image the role of an employee, and so forth and so on. So you are constantly then in the process of constructing this image of yourself. And it is this clinging to this image that constitutes the whole difficulty of the path. Otherwise, there's nothing to do. So there's not anything that you do to become enlightened, inasmuch as it's a thing that you simply stop doing. It is a matter of subtraction. You see, cessation, ending. It's not so much what you got to go and see or read or etc. Just the reverse. Simply release your attachment to this image that you have created of yourself. And you will automatically experience what is already the case, your own enlightenment. So we want to go into these things a little bit. It's a little complex subject, but I think you can handle it, right? All right. Now, a couple of more things have to be said. And again, Pam, your story is our stories, right? Isn't it? She told all of our stories, right? Just the names of the characters would change, but the theme remains the same, right? It had all of the tragedy and the horror that we all know so well, huh? But it's very interesting. On the path now, it is this clinging to this image that we have of ourselves within the context of this feeling of separation that is the whole problem. So let's focus in on this clinging and this grasping and this trying to hold on to this image that we have of ourselves. Now, to appreciate that, you have to understand the concept of homeostasis. Now, homeostasis is simply the tendency in any system, whether it is an individual system or a global system, to remain unchanged. The biggest problem on the path, you see, is that this self that you have fabricated refuses to change. It does not want to change. Hence, Pam, in your description you found that whenever you would come so close to those teachings, it's not that J. Krishnamurti was teaching anything different. That's the first thing you discovered. That Krishnamurti was not teaching anything fundamentally different from Ramakrishna Maharaj, right? And that these two were not teaching anything fundamentally different from Moses. Moses and his teachings are not fundamentally different from those of the African sages and mystics, as you discover at Asar Set. That wasn't the problem. And as you honestly stated here, the problem became whenever it came time to transform, whenever you left the comfort of information, that became the problem that causes you to contract and pull back. What we call resistance, right? We are doing everything in our power to avoid change and to remain in a state of what we feel to be equilibrium, to remain this self, this false self that we have become identified with. And this becomes the test. So I want to talk a little bit about that because I don't want to miss the opportunity to share with you things that will be useful in your sadhana as well as just information. Is that all right? Because many of you are like me, we're practitioners, so we want some practical stuff every now and then. I mean, it's all right to have a lot of this philosophy and metaphysics, but sometimes we want something that's going to help us in those wee hours of the mornings, right? When we're struggling with our meditation and things of that nature. So I want to keep that in mind as we make our investigation of this subject. So again, the struggles that you are experiencing on the path are inevitable. The resistance that you experience on the path is not only inevitable, it is a sign of progress. Now I know this comes as a bombshell to you. I am saying that when you start experiencing the evolution of the self, just this image that you've created of yourself, when that begins to evolve, you will find then that there is a resistance to going to the next level of your own self. Is this making sense to you? Don't confuse this now with egotism proper, which is the feeling of separation, because that's too deep. First, you got to understand the little ego. So I'm going to be talking about ego with a capital E, right? The big E. No offense, Big. I call my sister Big E, but I don't mean big ego by that, okay? Right? The big E, which is that sense of separation, and the little E, which is the sense of self. All right? Because this sense of self, the little E, is an epiphenomena, isn't it? It's a little phenomena inside of a larger one. Are you following me here? Right? And so long after you have refined your sense of self, there will still be ego, the big E. It is the last barrier to fall away. Now, what happens now then, what sadhana start doing is start challenging you to reconstruct yourself. That is what Pam meant, is that when one encounters the teachings of the saints, the challenge is not to reshape your beliefs. The challenge is to restructure yourself. Hence, working on your anger, working on your lust, working on your greed, working on your attachment, and all these things, doing meditation, adopting the vegetarian diet, laying a moral foundation. All of these things shakes up your comfort at being who you were, doesn't it? Because you have become very comfortable with who you were prior to coming on the path. There was a you that had became crystallized, solidified, you see? And you have become very comfortable in being that you. Right? And the first thing that the path does is it begins to deconstruct that thing. Right? And you experience that. You react to that. Because now to meditate regularly and punctually at a fixed time on a daily basis will cause you to change. Because you have never done that before. And I want you to understand it, because I hear sometimes you guys beat up on yourself. And if there's anything that hurt me, it's only when I hear you beat up on yourself. Now I must tell you, that hurts me very bad. You see, I don't like to hear that. It means that I have failed. Something I've done wrong. I must have communicated something. You see, I must be doing a bad job up here. You see, don't beat up on yourself. Understand what's going on here. I want you to understand that the resistance that you experience in your attempt to live the path, live the teaching, that resistance is natural. You are not an evil person. You are not a no good, ungrateful person because you experience some resistance. That is nonsense. Absolute nonsense. It has that resistance that you feel, that recoiling away from, that struggle, is not an indication of your lack of worthiness to be on the path at all. It has nothing to do with your worth and value. Period. So that has to be made clear from the very beginning, because there's very often a misunderstanding of this. You see, you have to understand that the you were and are as you come through the path is not going to be receptive to change. Because what, Brother Aiken? Change means death. We said last time that the only way to go to a higher level is that you must die. Is that about right? So there's a kind of dying that is going on here. And it is the dying of this sense of self in order to come into another higher sense of self. And this next higher sense of self will have to die in order to go to the next, the next, the next. You all follow this hierarchy, right? Until it becomes pure self. And then even then, it has to now drop the illusion of separateness. You follow me? All right? So there is going to be some natural resistance on the path because you are in a state of homeostasis, aren't you? Right? And therefore there is a deep natural refusal to change. In fact, change frightens you. Please make a note. Most of us are terrified about change because change means going into the unknown. And we love the familiar, right? We tend to cling to that which is comfortable. And being who you are is very comfortable, right? So this resistance then is the thing that we must look at. Now just understanding that should make you understand that when you have set for yourself a certain time to do your meditation, understand you're going to have some resistance to doing that. Usually is, I have found that about 3 months into the path, about 3 months, after making that effort, right, to begin to adapt your life to the teaching, that is when you start experiencing a maximum resistance in the gravity of your being, your you, the little ego, right? That's where resistance starts maximizing, right? And it at this time that I'm telling you, don't give up because that is simply an indication that some change is happening. Now this is interesting. The resistance that you are feeling is an indicator of the fact that change is about to happen. It is an indicator of your growth, not of your failure. Are you getting my point? Right? Because I want you to see this differently. I want you to take a very different relationship to it. Otherwise, you'll get confused. You see? Otherwise, you'll get confused. So, when we talk about ego in the lowercase, what we're really talking about is cooperating consciously and deliberately with this process of dying. You see? Dying from this lower sense of self coming into higher sense of self. And that is the struggle on this path, right? Now these are very profound statements here that perhaps will require you to really meditate on it. I don't want you to leave this simply at the level of intellectual relationship. All right? I want you to really ponder this thing. Because if you can get insight into this here, it changes the whole way that you will move along these paths. Right? Now, with that in mind, now let's switch over for a little discussion. And again, I'm cutting this discussion short because we have to function within the time restraints here. But certainly, if at a future time, unsolved occasion, right, we will continue. But I want to say a little bit something now about the ego with a capital E, the big E. This feeling of separation. But the mystics have said over and over again that this feeling of separation is an illusion. It is not real. Then why are we having it? If what the mystics are saying is the case, that this separation from the whole is an illusion, is not real, then why are we having the experience? Because you really feel separate. I mean, that's not an illusion to us. That really feels real. Why are we having it in the first place? To understand that now, we have to talk a little bit about this kind of the evolution of consciousness. And we had talked some about that last time, if you recall. What is evolving really in the universe? At the ultimate level. Have you thought about it? What is really evolving? Let's think about that. We talk about evolution all the time. What is really evolving? What is happening? What is your understanding of evolution? What is going on? Expansion, right? More, greater manifestation, right, of some inherent potential, right? And that's pretty much what's happening here. The saints and mystics have said it even more succinctly. They said that evolution is nothing more than the unfoldment of spirit. That's what it is. Right. Now here's the interesting thing, that in the beginning stages of this unfoldment or evolution of consciousness, right, of spirit, it generates certain experiences. And we talked a little bit about the hierarchy of beings, right? Now we're going to talk a little bit more about it. Is that all right? Now, when consciousness emerges from matter, right? For the first time, it becomes conscious of its separateness. Separation, the physical thing, is already the case. Follow me? But you are unconscious of your separation. There was a time when you were totally unconscious of your separation. And now you have been evolving along the axis, right, of where you're becoming more conscious at each stage in that evolution of your oneness. What I am saying, that evolution is the unfoldment of consciousness that is experienced in the form of a higher and higher sense of oneness. The more consciousness is unfolded and manifest in your being, the more you connect with the whole. Are you following me? All right?
Can you just repeat that?
Yes. This is really, it's a cumbersome concept. The greater degree of unfoldment of spirit is subjectively experienced by a heightened sense of oneness. So as you begin to move along a spiritual path, practicing, what you begin to experience is an increased oneness. Now, for instance, when you were at an earlier stage in this process of unfoldment, just in terms of your human development, you did not feel a kind of oneness with the balance of the world, did you? If you could recall it, or if you study a young child, but you will find that child consciousness is embedded, isn't it? Initially in just its impulses, right? It is only at one with its instincts and impulses. The rest and balance of creation, it has no idea about. It is unconscious of it. You follow me? Right? As we evolve a little bit more, right? That means that the center of self pulls back, right? It goes deeper, right? Or go higher, or however you wish to illustrate this movement. And now it has a new locus and center of self that now makes the prior state of the self an object. This is heady stuff, right? But bear with me, because much can be profited from it if you understand this, right? At first, consciousness is embedded just at the level of the instincts, not the body proper, right? Just the instinct, your hunger, your thirst, right? Your comfort, your pain, and all these other things. You are your hunger. You are your thirst. Your sense of identity and oneness is with just those things, because that's where you're at in the developmental stage, right? As consciousness evolves a little bit more, right? And you're able now to shift the locus of your sense of self to the body, right? Now the instincts and appetites of the body become objects, don't they? In your awareness. You follow me? Right? You're able to reflect on your instincts now. You're no longer embedded in them. You can reflect on your hunger. You understand, right? The hunger is a part of me, but it's not all of me, etc. So you begin to see what is happening, that expansion, that ripple is moving out further and further into that which exists, right? Creating a feeling of oneness with it, right? In the same way, when this ripple of consciousness has fully manifested itself, that is the